Hi, this is Dr. Matt McClung. I am professor of percussion at Texas A&M University Corpus Christi, and I'm joining you from Vic Firth Studios. We're going to talk about the snare drum Etude. This is from the Peters book. It's number 19 in the Advanced Studies. Make sure you take a look at the errata, which are listed on the TMEA website. There's a couple of notes that aren't quite correct in the printed book, so make sure you get those fixed. One thing that happens with dynamics in this piece, there's only one place where there's pianissimo at all. It's right in the beginning. After that, all of your softs are just piano. So make sure that beginning stuff is really, really quiet, and you never get that quiet ever again through the rest of the piece. But make that first pianissimo really distinctive. The metric modulation in measure, I believe it's 17 to 18. He sets you up pretty good for that. He has you play a triplet ahead of time, and then when you're in 6/8, it has a triplet feel. So the piece goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, triplet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If that's confusing, take a look at my video and just watch at that point what happens. But the big beats stay the same, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But eighth notes change, so eighth notes and 16th notes are no longer the same value. It feels fine, but it looks a little funny on the page, so make sure you understand that. The hardest part of this piece, as far as I'm concerned, are the ruffs in measures 26 through 29. They're really hard. You have to hear all 4 notes. Each time you play this ruff in those measures, they all have to be equal. They all have to sound the same. You have to keep your time steady. A lot of times it's easy to let the ruff make the beat after the ruff come late. So you have to make sure those beats are right on time and they're not made late by the ruffs. You have to do all of this at a very soft dynamic. It would be hard enough to do this at mezzo forte, but doing it at piano, it's really tricky. I recommend practicing it slowly with a metronome. Practice it first, say mezzo forte, but as soon as you can get it down to piano, practice it soft. Also, practice it with and without the ruffs. Just practice doing the sticking you would normally do, only without the ruffs, and then add the ruffs. And make sure that when you add the ruffs, it doesn't change the rhythm, but your rhythm stays constant in those measures. Most of the dynamic changes in this piece are sudden. They're not preceded by a crescendo or a diminuendo. It just happens right away. You go from forte to piano or vice versa. Make sure you don't give those away by getting soft before it's time to get soft or starting a crescendo before it's time to get loud. Make sure those happen like the drop off of a cliff. It should happen absolutely suddenly, and no one should know it's going to happen until it does. The rolls in measures 44 and 46 are untied rolls. They're not tied to any notes. And when these rolls happen, you have to put spaces in between them. Like it's almost like a little breath. Ba, ba, ba. They're not ba, ba, ba. They're not tied to each other. They don't end with a tag. They end by just lifting your sticks and then putting the sticks back down. So make sure, if that's confusing to you, take a look at my video and watch what happens there. But the notes aren't tied to anything, so they don't end at a specific point. There's just a breath in between them. And when you practice that, make sure you do it with a metronome, because it's easy to slow down or move your tempo around at that point. So make sure, again, that the rolls have breaths in between them when they aren't tied to other notes. I recorded the 3rd and 4th measures of this piece 5 different ways, because sometimes people think when you're playing snare drum, you can't make a phrase. And it's not true, and sometimes they say there's no character in a snare drum, and that's not true either. So it's really important you start thinking about not just playing the right notes at the right time at the right dynamic, but character. So I recorded those 2 measures with 5 different sort of characters. One of them has a little bit of a push every quarter note. One of them has a little bit of a push every 8th note. One of them pushes the entrance of the 32nd notes. one of them groups these little figures into 3/16th note groups, starting on the note before the 32nd notes. And then the fifth way I did it was just flat, with no inflection. Any of those interpretations is correct, and if you come up with some other interpretation, that's great too. The only one that I would caution you from using is the flat one. It's really boring, and there's no character. If you give a little bit of a push, a little bit of a feel so we know what's going on, it sounds much more interesting, and if you don't do that, it sounds like typing. It's really boring, and nobody wants to listen to that. Always, always practice slowly, practice with a metronome, and write stuff down. Write in your stickings. Never feel bad about writing stuff into your part. Write as much stuff as possible, and it makes your life a whole lot easier, and you can see stuff coming. Circle dynamics, write in stickings that sometimes you may goof up. Just write it in. It makes life a whole lot easier. I recommend for this piece the Atkatz snare drum sticks. They're great sticks. They're really sort of all-purpose sticks that I use all the time in performances with orchestras. They're really high-quality sticks, and I recommend them.